Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Nashville. My name is Jay Tiefenbrunn and I'm very pleased to be your Director of Music Ministries. I'd like to invite you to join in singing this morning with hymn number 300 in the gray hymnal. Hymn number 300 with heart and mind. Please rise in body or in spirit as you're so moved and join in the singing. With heart and mind and voice and hand, may we this time and place transcend to make our purpose understood. A mortal search for mortal good, a firm commitment to the goal of justice, freedom, peace for all. A mind that's free to seek the truth. A mind that's free in age and youth to choose a path no threat impedes. Wherever light of conscience leads, our martyrs died so we could be a church where every mind is free. A heart that's kind, a heart whose search makes love the spirit of your church, where we can grow and each one's gift is sanctified and spirits lift, where every door is open wide for all who choose to step inside. Our second song this morning is number 169. Number 169, We Shall Overcome. Please feel free to follow the folk tradition. I will line out the lyrics for you if you'd rather. We Shall Overcome, 169. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand. We'll walk hand in hand someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we'll walk hand in hand someday. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free. We shall all be free someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall all be free someday. We shall live in peace. We shall you turn the page one page over, 170, We Are a Gentle, Angry People, also known as Singing for Our Lives by Holly Near. Our verse 5 is, we are all in this together, as Miss Near realized that she needed to be more inclusive in her language. So verse 5 will be, we are all in this together. Again, I'll line this out for you if you'd rather sing without the books in your hands. Number 170. We are a gentle, angry people. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, angry people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a justice-seeking people, and we are singing for our lives. We are young and old together. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. We are young and old together, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are a land of many colors, and we are singing for our lives. We are all in this together. We are all in this together, and we are singing for our lives. We are all in this together, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. We are a gentle, loving people, and we are singing for our lives. Good morning. Please take a moment and greet your neighbors.
At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us.
Come into this circle of love and of justice. Come into this community where we can dream and believe in those dreams. Come into this holy space where we remember who we are and how we want to live. Come now and let us worship together.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Sing that back. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Good, listen. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Sing that back. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. That's your part. Here we go. I'll sing it all the way through for you. 1, 2, ready, go. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Sing it again. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. One more time. We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Take it, Melanie.
Until the killing of black men, black mothers' sons, is as important as the killing of white men, white mothers' sons. That which touches me most is that I had a chance to work with people, passing on to others that which was passed on to me.
We who believe.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. To me, young people come first. They have the courage where we fail. And if I can but shed some light as they carry us through the gale. The older I get, the better I know that the secret of my going on is when the reins are in the hands of the young who dare to carry us through the storm.
Your turn.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Not needing a clutch for power, not needing the light just to shine on me. I need to be one in the number as we stand against tyranny. Struggling myself don't mean a whole lot. I've come to realize that teaching others to stand up and fight is the only way our struggle survives.
Here we go.
We who believe in freedom cannot rest. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes. Oh, we who believe in freedom cannot rest. We who believe in freedom cannot rest until it comes.
Good morning. So this morning's story is two things that I think is pretty awesome. One, it's true. And two, it's local. It's a true story that started back in the 1930s, and it started in Monteagle, Tennessee. And what I'm talking about is a place called the Highlander Folk School. It was started by a man named Miles Horton, and he was one of those angry, gentle people. He wanted to change things. He had a huge heart and great compassion, and he knew that all people were equal. All people were deserving of the same things as everyone else. And so he started the Highlander Folk School to teach people about those things and how to stand up for those things. He worked with unions. He worked with African Americans. He worked in Appalachia. And many people went to his school. In fact, Martin Luther King Jr. went there. Rosa Parks went there. In fact, when Rosa went, she was at a point in her life where she felt that she just wasn't going to get anything done. There really wasn't any point. And she was so heartened by her experience there. Guess what she did a week after she left? She sat down in the front of the bus. So the Highlander Folk School trained a lot of people to be organizers and activists, and they trained them all together in a time when African Americans were not welcome in so many places, when white people and black people couldn't marry, no matter how much they might love each other, where it was illegal for them to go to school together. They did it at the Highlander Folk School. And lots of people came from all around the South to visit. And one time, a young choir of African American children from Atlanta, Georgia came. And they stayed. That's a bit of a trip. They stayed the night. And that evening, they were there with the other children from the school, black, white, everyone together. And they watched a movie. Now, at the same time, there was a group of men in town who were rumbling and grumbling about this. They were not in the slightest bit happy. They were, in fact, very much afraid. And so, to deal with that fear, they got their guns, they got together, they got in their vehicles, and they roared out to the Highlander Folk School. And they all pulled up, kicking up the dust, got out of those vehicles, brandishing their guns, and they stormed into that room where those children were watching the movie. And everyone was just waiting to see what was going to happen now. And someone reached up and turned off the projector. And it was completely black. No one could see anything. And you could feel the fear, the anxiety, the anticipation in that room. And the men with the guns started yelling. Again, still so fearful, yelling. And finally, they fell silent again. And at that point, they heard something else.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday.
They knew many songs that came from old spirituals. and they sang them then. And other people sang with them and helped them with these songs. One of them, for example, was a Unitarian named Pete Seeger, who some of you will have heard of. And in that moment of fear, the unknown, the darkness, they continued singing. They made up their own words that suited that moment.
We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, I still believe we are not afraid someday.
And to this day, those words, they reopened under another name in another part of Tennessee, and it exists to this day, and they get royalties from that song. And as you did at the beginning of this service, we all still sing it. And there are some of us here who are just the right age to have been one of the children sitting there watching that movie. Who knows, maybe one of you did. But the point is, we are still a gentle, angry people, and we shall overcome. So ends the story.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Lyserson. I'm a member of this congregation, and it is my pleasure to welcome you here in the sanctuary and those joining us online to worship this morning. In order to reach a wider community than those able to be physically present on Sunday morning, portions of this service are live streamed and available on YouTube and on our website at thefund.org. Before I continue, let me remind you to silence your cell phones. As Unitarian Universalists, our spiritual paths vary, but in this congregation, we have made a covenant together. We affirm our interdependence, celebrate our differences, and work for justice. We deepen our relationships as we create a compassionate, welcoming community, nurture spiritual growth, and act on our values in the broader world. I want to extend a special welcome to visitors worshiping with us this morning. We ask you to wear the paper name tags because it helps us to get to know you better. If you're seeking a spiritual home, we hope you may find it here. Whether you're new to Unitarian Universalism or visiting from another UU congregation, we invite you to stop by the welcome table after the service to have your questions answered. People become members of this congregation by signing the membership book and supporting the church with their time and finances. If you're considering joining the church, please talk to our assistant minister, Holly Miller. Following the service, we hope everyone will enjoy coffee and fellowship in the social area, where you will also find information about current opportunities for engagement and reflection. There are a number of announcements in the weekly bulletin, which I hope you will take home and read. I have two more. On July 17th, that's this Tuesday, at 6:30 p.m., FUUN will host a NOAA candidate forum for the August School Board District 8 election. NOAA has pushed Metro Nashville Public Schools hard to eliminate the disproportionate suspensions and expulsions of African American children. Turnout is critical. Bring your questions. The forum will be in the sanctuary, then meet the candidates in the common area. Second, the office has had a request for ASL translation for an occasional visitor. So in an effort towards greater inclusion, we're hoping to find someone who could provide American Sign Language translation should the need arise. If you know ASL and are open to helping out, please speak with or email our Assistant Minister, Holly Miller. And now I'd like to invite forward Sharon Ruiz to share her stewardship moment with us. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Sharon Reese, and I'm a member of this congregation. I was so pleased to have the opportunity to give a stewardship moment today when the topic was social justice. As many of you know, I am a public defender, and I have been for a number of years. I love my job, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to do it. When I first came here, though, I wasn't looking for spiritual nourishment so much as I was looking for emotional care. Around that time, I was still a fairly new lawyer, and I began representing someone who had done something so violent and so senseless that my family and friends were just appalled that I was involved. The DA's office was considering seeking the death penalty, and outside of the office and my supportive spouse, I really felt alone. I really needed to find a community where people would understand, not just on an intellectual level, but on an emotional level, what I do. I was looking for people who would value me and value people like my client. I needed people who would recognize that no one is as bad as the worst thing they've ever done. The first principle is what drew me into this church, but I have stayed for many reasons. The people here care about me, and as a congregation, we not only care about social justice, but we do our best to live social justice. This congregation loves and nurtures my children, and my faith in people is renewed and sustained through this church. I'm so proud to support the church with my monthly pledge, and I'm glad to give the church my time through committee work and volunteering. When I first walked into this sanctuary, I needed something for myself, and now I'm grateful for the chance to participate in our shared ministry. So I want to say thank you to everyone, and I look forward to continuing the work of justice with you. Thank you.
We have each come here today carrying with us joys and concerns from outside these walls. We carry heartaches that are heavy and joys that are light. And now, in symbolism of that which we carry, you may come forward, and our lay minister, Jack. that allows us to enact that faith and growth. We are currently sharing our plate with Safe Haven, the only homeless shelter in our community that will take in entire families, and half of the loose cash collected today will go to fund their work in our community. The gifts of this congregation will now be most gratefully received.
Good morning. My name is Steve Haruch. I'm a member of this congregation. I'd like to begin with a poem by Hanif Abdurraqib. The title is, "How Can Black People Write About Flowers at a Time Like This?" It's okay to laugh. Dear reader, with our heels digging into the good mud at a swamp's edge, you might tell me something about the dandelion and how it is not a flower itself, but a plant made up of several small flowers at its crown. And Lord knows I have been called by what I look like more than I have been called by what I actually am, and I wish to return the favor for the purpose of this exercise, which too is an attempt at fashioning something pretty out of seeds refusing to make anything worthwhile of their burial. Size me up and skip whatever semantics arrive to the tongue first. Say, that boy, he looked like a hollowed-out grandfather clock. He looked like $1 million God with a 2-cent heaven. Like all it takes is one kiss, and before morning, you could scatter his whole mind across a field. So recently I was watching a documentary called The Black Panthers Vanguard of the Revolution, which is streaming on Netflix if you also want to watch it. There's a lot to unpack in that movie, but I found myself really riveted by this footage of Fred Hampton speaking in Chicago in 1968, and he was talking about racial equality and social justice in this way that is just incredibly electrifying. And something he would do at his speeches, he would raise his hand and he would ask people to repeat after him, "I am a revolutionary." And by the third or fourth time he did this, everyone in the room would be shouting and chanting with him. And as someone who's not really a joiner, I find it kind of hard to raise my voice in public in that way. I just am not really a slogan shouter. and it just doesn't come naturally to me. So, you know how you see people carrying these signs sometimes at the protests that say, "It's so bad, even the introverts are out here"? I really feel that. So that led me to this question: can I still be a revolutionary if I'm quiet about it? This morning's theme is social justice and a spiritual practice. And when I think of those words, spiritual practice, usually what I think about is quiet. I think about silence, and I think about meditation. I'm a person who sometimes feels kind of trapped in my own head, so that's why I like writing, because I can externalize things and without making a whole lot of noise. Lately, I find it very hard to find my way into that kind of silence that feels like a spiritual practice. The other day, I was inspired, even if I still have some reservations about this, I was inspired by the fact that the Justice Department has reopened the case of Emmett Till, who as many of you know, was a black teenager from Chicago who was murdered in Mississippi. So in this moment, I decided I posted a photo of two books side by side. One of them was The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy B. Tyson, which was published in 2017, and part of the reason the investigation is being reopened is because of information that was revealed in this book. The other book is called Midnight Without a Moon, and it's a middle grade novel told from the perspective of a 14-year-old girl living in Mississippi at that time. So I post this photo, and the first comment that pops up goes something like this: "Oh, sure, Black Lives Matter. It seems like they're the only lives that matter to publishers, but I guess that's not PC to say." There was more to this comment, but I've forgotten it on purpose. And that led me to another question, which is, does deleting comments from the internet count as spiritual practice? I really don't know, but I'm kind of hoping that it is. It felt that way, sending this comment out into the ether to disappear felt righteous, even if it was a small gesture. And that brings me back to this idea of quiet. What I was trying to create was a kind of silence. I was trying to create a space for the ideas in these books. Compassion, to be broadcast uninterrupted. And that made me, that also reminds me of when Black Lives Matter protesters were on Lower Broadway the other night. There were white allies who formed a circle. Our silence, I think, sometimes can form a barrier of protection. So I posted a photo of books, and books are a way that we can learn, and reading is a quiet activity, sometimes anyway. And I like to argue that books and reading and learning are as important as marching and carrying signs. We don't have to rank those things. Related to that, as I told my cohort at the Nashville Pledge workshop that I was involved in, part of my practice is looking at the people that I follow on social media and really thinking as deeply as I can about who those people are. Is it all people who are like me? And when I do speak up, whose voices do I try to amplify? Sometimes I felt like I came to social justice issues only when there was a crisis in the news and that I was playing catch up. So I'm trying to just be a better listener beforehand and always. And so my silence is a way of learning and growing so that I'm ready for these things when they arise, has also been part of my practice. So that poem that I started with actually was inspired by a real experience. There was actually someone at a poetry reading who felt that they should express this sentiment that how can Black people write about flowers at a time like this? Hanif's poem, I think, asks the reader, well, he says, whatever semantics arrive to the tongue first, skip those. So that's another way of being quiet and being open to what you see. I think the poem also suggests that seeing a person and thinking that because that person's experience in a Black body qualifies them to talk about racial injustice, that they should only be talking about racial injustice, is also a kind of racial injustice. And that the poem asks us to consider that a time like this, for some people, has always been a time like this. So when I think about Fred Hampton and the Panthers and the struggles of the 60s, I think of the signs that people carried saying, "Black is beautiful." And when someone writes a poem about a flower and it explores all the dimensions of the beauty of a flower, it doesn't have to argue that a flower is beautiful. That's something we accept. So going forward in my times of quiet and reflection as a part of social justice and spiritual practice, I think of something that a poet somewhat older than Hanif Abdurraqib once said, that truth is beauty. And then I think if you seek one, then you also seek them both. Thank you.
Okay, two hobbits, Sam, Frodo. We are taking a break from our travel to Mount Doom, where we've been trying to save the world. I can't do this, Sam.
I know, it's all wrong. By rights, we shouldn't even be here, but we are. It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo. The ones that really mattered, full of darkness and danger they were. And sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you. That meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't, because they were holding on to something.
But what are we holding on to, Sam?
That there's something good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. I'm Jessica Moore Lucas. I'm a member of this church. I'm one of the co-chairs of the Social Justice Committee, and I was asked to talk today about social justice as a spiritual practice. I'm not a joiner, and I'm not very good at following rules, so I hope I met the brief. A long time ago, I copied something into my journal that I attributed to Ram Dass. The work we do on ourselves is an offering to other beings. The work we do for other beings is an offering to ourselves. I haven't been able to verify this. The power of Google has failed me. So I may have miscopied it. I may have misattributed it. I may have made it up entirely. But whatever its provenance, this statement reflects how justice work and I have engaged each other. And I have to say, showing up for justice looks like a lot of things for me, but no matter how much I want it to, I don't come out as the hero of a great movie. I'm more of a social justice bard, like Steve, than I am a social justice warrior. I tell stories. And so I'm going to start with the work we do on ourselves, or the work I do on myself, because the very nature of my brain has required me to do a lot of work on myself just to be able to live comfortably in my own skin. Particularly when I first started working on myself, it was entirely selfish in motivation, and I was in my 30s before anybody told me it was okay to do work on myself. My motivation was entirely selfish. Taking care of myself was a matter of my survival. My brain chemistry was telling me lies about my security and undermining my resilience. I had to do work on myself to undo those lies. Those lies were mostly that everything everywhere was awful and there was nothing I could do about it because I was probably pretty stupid. And to get better, I had to go to therapy, which was a luxury of time and money I was privileged to have. I had to meditate, I had to read, I had to write, and I had to learn true things about myself and the world. And I recognize now that being able to see and name my bad brain chemistry as clinical depression is a reflection of my privilege, that I had the access to care and the time and money to be able to do it. Nonetheless, to survive, I had to do this work on myself. And while I was doing that work, I wasn't thinking about other beings at all. And on the off chance that I was, it was because I recognized how much I needed something from them. I needed wise words from my therapist. I participated in music here because it fed me. You all think that I sing in the choir because it's for you? No, totally for me. All about the me. Or at least it was. Building relationships with friends, all of these things were to help build me up and make me stronger to deal with my own stuff. I built up my resilience and deepened my connections to my community because that's what I needed to get better. That's what saved my life. And these connections I found started working both ways, whether I wanted them to or not. Deeper and healthier relationships are good for everyone involved in them. And one of the things that came out of this work on myself was that I started listening to that inner voice that had been pushing me to do more for my community and the world around me for years. Although, like so many things, I kind of backed into it. I joined the Social Justice Committee because my daughter, who was 4 or 5 at the time, kept asking me about the homeless people we passed on our daily trek up Nolensville Road to take her to school. And so I joined the Social Justice Committee so I could tell her what we were doing to help so she would stop asking. I think I do a lot of things as a parent so that we can have the conversation one more time and then maybe calm down about it. And I became co-chair of the Social Justice Committee also sort of by accident when no one else would do it, and I was promised a light workload. That workload has grown as I've grown into the role, and I've grown thanks to good mentors, although we also have great members on the Social Justice Committee, challenging times, and learning to listen to my heart. We're looking for a new co-chair right now, by the way, and what I can promise anyone who's interested is a light workload. Me as a mentor, I don't know if that's good or bad, and an opportunity to grow. And the work I did on myself enabled me to show up and work for the liberation of others. And that work that I'm now showing up to do for others has become an offering to myself. Showing up and working for others has called me more to myself and called me to recognize the spaces where I am not seeing my common humanity with others. I also discovered that showing up for others reveals the places where I am still rough around my edges, and it helped me personally put down old baggage I hadn't even realized I had been carrying my entire adult life. Over the past 20 months or so, I've been our congregation's representative to Nashville Community Defense, a local organization that's now part of Workers' Dignity, whose aim is to help immigrants in our community in the face of unjust immigration actions that deny their humanity. And the Sanctuary Working Group, which I've been a part of, the original aim was to create a network of churches willing to provide sanctuary on their campuses. As immigration actions have increased and become more indiscriminate, we've found sanctuary less useful, and that the directly affected are conflicted by this tactic anyway. And while nationwide people have taken refuge in churches, there are other ways churches can provide effective moral witness to this injustice and act for those who are directly affected, be it themselves, their family members, and reaching out to those people. And in short, efforts on behalf of the immigrants in our community have involved far less civil disobedience and far more writing op-eds and attending potlucks than I would have imagined in December of 2016. Because while the family separations taking place on our southern border are absolutely horrific, they make me want to cry and yell and burn it all down. Every day in Nashville, every day in our community, unjust immigration enforcement is separating families and causing pain, stress, and trauma. Right now, NCD is helping several families who have lost their primary wage earners to immigration detention and deportation. Last week, I helped deliver a grocery gift card to a mom of 5 whose husband has been deported so she could buy her family groceries and her baby diapers. Her husband and his brother were detained so quickly after being caught that sanctuary wasn't an option. But helping the family have food to eat, diapers for the baby, and school clothes for the older children is something that the sort of churches of Nashville Community Defense can do. But we had to pay attention and listen and realize that what is needed isn't about us. It's about those this is happening to. We had to be present to do work for others. And this work isn't glamorous. I went to the grocery store. I bought a gift card. I drove it to someone else who took it to the family. My Spanish is terrible and Sherry's is better, so it's best that she do it, or I might say something embarrassing or offensive. I was hoping that defending immigrants in our community would look less like my suburban soccer mom errands, to be honest. I've spent a lot more time in church basements and social halls and at my own desk than the movie version of this would allow. But this is the work. And this work has put me in community with far more Christians than I had been in community with before, which has caused me to grapple with my own spiritual baggage. I was raised in mainline Protestantism, and being in these spaces has made me confront the things I'm still carrying with me from that. I didn't leave Christianity because I was rejected. It was more that I became increasingly aware that the people who had taught me to love Jesus were teaching me that he didn't love many of my friends as much as I did. And I drifted away gradually. Since I hadn't been rejected, since there hadn't been that dramatic scene of someone telling me I was going to hell and me saying, yeah, you go to hell, I'm trying to script the movie version of this as I go along, and I slowly meandered away instead. I hadn't been forced to deal with the way that the theology and religious community of my childhood and youth had shaped me. I had a history that I had been ignoring. I had been carrying it like a backpack that I didn't even know was on. But through that work, standing up as a co-conspirator with the immigrants in our community, with people from various liberal Protestant denominations, I was in spaces where we prayed, sometimes to a gendered God, which makes me a little, I'm probably not the only you who, when someone says Father God, goes, really? We prayed to a gendered God, and at a vigil outside of the ICE facility here in Nashville, I received ashes on my forehead for Ash Wednesday for the first time in probably 20 years. Being in this shared space of mutual commitment and concern, dare I say covenant, softened my heart. I still don't like calling God Father, and I still don't like the exclusivity many Christians express, but I've also found comfort in some of the prayers and rituals we have shared. Much like I had absolutely no intention of the work I did on myself, opening me up to helping others, The work I showed up to do, working for the liberation of other beings, helped me grow as a spiritual being because it put me in direct contact with the very thing I hadn't been engaging in for many years. And I think this is the epitome. There's this African concept of Ubuntu, and it's usually translated as community or interdependence. I recently attended a workshop where it was defined as, instead, it comes from a saying that roughly translates to, I am because you are because we are. And I think this has called me into a more, the work on myself is that I now understand that more deeply. Thank you.
The lyrics for our next hymn are on the back of your order of service, If We Just Talk of Thoughts and Prayers. These lyrics are sung to the tune, The Gift of Love, or O Wally Wally, and they were written following the shooting at a church in Sutherland, Texas in 2017. If We Just Talk of Thoughts and Prayers. If we just talk of thoughts and prayers and don't live out a faith that dares and don't take on the ways of death, our thoughts and prayers are fleeting breath. If we just dream of what could be and do not build community and do not seek to change our ways, our dreams of change are false displays. If we just sing of doing good and don't walk through our neighborhood to learn its hope, to ease its pain, our talk of good is simply vain. Oh, may our prayers and dreams and songs lead to a faith that takes on wrongs, that works for peace and justice too. Then will our prayers bring joy to you.
As we move into our meditation, I invite you to take a deep breath. Feel your weight settle in the seat. Let your eyes gaze softly or close. Let your shoulders relax. As we move into silent meditation, I invite you to contemplate those values you hold dearest and how you might live them out. May it be so.
Morning, my name's Tom Surface. I'm a member of this congregation, and I'm not really sure talking about spiritual stuff. What I know is that there are things that move me to do things, and I think of it as I have spiritual practice, and I think of it as a spiritual journey. Sometimes it's about figuring out what I don't believe. That's the easy part. But figuring out, what do I believe? That could take some work. But one of the things that's been bothering me for many years is this. There are systems of racism in my world, and I have a particular relationship to them, especially due to my whiteness. And the thing is, my beliefs around this issue are not clear. In my soul, I know that there is much that is wrong. It's a bit like karma for us white folks. Our silence in the face of systems of racism harm us. We cannot be truly whole until everyone in our city, everyone in our planet is included at the table. My story, of course, is typical. I'm a hetero, cis, able-bodied, college-educated, old white guy. Raised liberal, as a young man, I thought I was immune to racism and could walk through the world colorblind. As a teenager, I even thought the negative reaction I got about my long hair qualified me as an oppressed person. I was proud to be denied service at a local restaurant, one at which I still boycott. But over time, some things happened to blow up my ideas on racism. I learned that I am not immune to it myself, and I realized that I don't know shite about it. A number of years ago, I changed careers and taught math at a large metro high school. That experience presented many challenges. Some I met and some I didn't. But while I found ways to reach some students, there was one group that I had particular difficulty connecting with: young black men. Now I know, why should any teenager want to listen to me talk about algebra and geometry? But as a teacher, that's what you have to do. You have to make connections. And my experience there began to change my thoughts about racism and white privilege. I got a real education at that school. One Saturday morning, I attended a community meeting hosted by then Mayor Megan Barry, remember her? The topic was criminal justice and racial issues. I sat at a table with 10 people of different colors and backgrounds and listened to their stories. Driving while black, incarceration, inequality, and so on. I found it so valuable to hear those stories, especially while looking directly into the face of someone sitting across the table. I came away from that experience feeling bereft of hope again. Racism is just too embedded in our world to ever be rooted out, I thought. I was not sure what could be done and doubtful that I could have any positive impact on it anyway. I still feel that way sometimes, but my spirit is still telling me that I need to keep on listening. I need to keep on learning. While I'll never fully understand what it's like to be black in America, I want to continue to try to develop a better knowledge on an intellectual basis. I enjoy reading black authors, James McBride, Ta-Nehisi Coates, James Baldwin, searching out work by black artists, going to movies. And Steve is right, that self-study is helpful, it's important, it's spiritual work. A year ago, I joined our church's Beloved Community Committee. There I found people already thinking, talking, and doing anti-racist activities. There I found more information helpful to me in my search for understanding. As part of that committee, I've been able to expand my knowledge and even participate in anti-oppression work. I'm helping organize and facilitate the Nashville Pledge Program. And this work, the learning and the participation with others, has fed my spirit. I'm so grateful that my church has this group the beloved community committee. And by the way, I'm happy to speak with anyone who wants to know more about what we do. We will be holding our second Nashville Pledge program in September, and I encourage you to check it out. So that's where I am right now with my spiritual work. Right now, my spiritual beliefs include this. As a white person, I need to do whatever I can to work towards dismantling the systems of racism in my world. I screw up, I get it wrong a lot, I feel there's so much that needs to be done, and I struggle to know what I should be doing. But I believe there are little steps that are happening.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join in singing our closing song, number 1014, Answering the Call of Love. Number 1014 in the turquoise hymnal.
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. Answering the call, we are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. Answering the call, we are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. Answering, we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. Answering the call, we are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one, emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim. Answering, we are answering the call of love. We are answering the call of love.
The words for the chalice extinguishing are printed at the bottom of your order of service. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
There is too much hardship in this world to not find joy every day. There is too much injustice in this world to not right the balance every day. And there is too much pain in this world to not heal every day. Each of us are ministers to a weary world, and let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make this world more loving more compassionate, and more filled with grace every day. This service is over. May our service begin again, renewed.